It started with a scream, lost in the wind. A man, half dead, stumbling out of the storm, with frostbitten hands and eyes hollowed by grief. He collapsed through the door of a mountain lodge in the Swiss Alps, gasping one name, Petra. That was 2002. The air was sharp, the snow relentless, and the mountains silent as ever. No one knew then that this wasn't just a tragic accident, that what happened on that frozen peak wasn't just a story of nature's cruelty, but of something far darker. Something buried, something that would take 20 years, and a force of nature no one could ignore. To finally bring to light, Stefan Fiser and Petra Krueger were a couple in love, or at least that's what everyone believed. They were experienced climbers, drawn to the beauty and challenge of the Alps. This trip was supposed to be a celebration of their bond, a return to the wild places that first brought them together. But somewhere, up there, on a glacier hidden beneath fresh snow and secrets, everything went wrong. Stefan came back. Petra didn't. He told rescuers she fell into a crevasse, a bottomless crack in the ice, and vanished in seconds. He described the horror of it, the way the rope yanked him forward, how he fought to stay alive in a snow cave for days, half frozen, half mad with grief. His story was so raw, so convincing, that no one questioned it. The search went on for days. Her sister Simona drove through the night to stand at the base of the mountain, staring up at the white void where her sister had disappeared. But the storm had erased everything. No body, no clues, just silence. The case was closed. Petra was presumed dead, lost to the ice. But Simona never let go. While the world moved on, she kept digging. Not literally, not at first, but in her mind, in files, in memories. Something about Stefan's story didn't sit right. They were roped together, right? So if Petra fell, the force should have nearly pulled him in. He should have had rope burns, injuries, something. But his medical report showed frostbite, exhaustion, nothing from a fall arrest. Just nothing, she asked the police. She called experts. She was told she was grieving, that trauma clouds memory, that accidents happen in the mountains. But Simona wasn't looking for comfort. She was looking for truth. And for 20 years, the glacier kept it. Then, in 2022, the mountain finally spoke. A record-breaking heat wave swept across Europe. The Alps, usually cloaked in snow by autumn, were baking under an unnatural sun. Glaciers that had stood for centuries began to crack and groan. And one day, high on a remote face of the range, a massive section of ice broke loose. Not a snow avalanche, this was a glacial collapse. Millions of tons of ancient ice and rock crashing down the mountain like a slow-motion earthquake. When the dust settled, the landscape had changed. Whole sections of the mountain were stripped bare, revealing things that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Weeks later, a local ski mountaineer named Leo was exploring the aftermath. He loved the quiet, the raw power of the mountains after a big event. As he glided across the scarred terrain, something caught his eye, a flash of color in a world of blue and white, pink, purple, tattered fabric, half melted out of the ice. He got closer. It was a jacket, and sticking out of the sleeve, a human bone. A few feet away, a skull lay in a pool of meltwater, and right next to it, a single mountaineering boot. Still strapped with a krampon, those spiked metal things. Climbers attached to their boots to grip ice. It was like the mountain had spit up a piece of the past, and it wasn't letting it go. Leo called the authorities. The recovery team arrived, and within hours, they confirmed it. The clothes matched Petra Krueger's last known photo. After 20 years, she had been found. Simona was told her sister was finally coming home. Relief washed over her, but it didn't last. Because when the forensic pathologist examined the bones, something stopped her cold. The skull wasn't shattered from a fall. It had puncture wounds. Small, round, deep holes, like something sharp and heavy had been driven into it again and again. And the damage, it matched the spikes on a krampon, not just any krampon. The kind climbers wear on their boots. The kind Stefan Fiser was wearing the last time anyone saw them alive. Now, the questions started piling up like snow. If Petra fell into a crevasse, why was her body found miles from where Stefan said it happened? Glaciers move, sure, but not that far, not in that direction. And how did a krampon, a piece of Stefan's gear, end up right next to her remains? The boot found at the site was a man's size 45. Petra wore a 38. It could only have belonged to one person. Then came the final blow. Investigators tracked down Stefan's old storage unit. Inside a dusty duffel bag, they found the other krampon, the matching one. Forensic metallurgy showed microscopic damage on the spikes. Tiny fractures that only happen when steel hits bone, not ice, not rock. Bone. Detective Thomas Sigler laid it all out in front of Stefan during an interview. Photos of the skull, the boot, the krampon, the timeline, the lies. Stefan sat there, pale, silent. No denial, no explanation. Just 2 words, asterisk, my lawyer, asterisk, and then, he disappeared. The house was sold. The bank accounts drained. Surveillance missed it by hours. Stefan and his current partner vanished, using fake passports, flying through backdoor airports, disappearing into a country with no extradition. The police launched a manhunt, but it was too late. He was gone, so here we are. 20 years after a woman vanished in the Alps, we know she didn't fall. She was attacked, bludgeoned, left to freeze in the ice while the man who survived built a new life on a lie. And now, he's on the run. Not from the mountain, but from the truth. But why? What really happened up there? Was it a fight? A moment of rage? Did Petra try to leave him? And how did a man who looked half dead in 2002 manage to outsmart an entire investigation 2 decades later? The glacier gave up her body. But it didn't give up the whole story. And that story is far from over. When Stefan Fiser disappeared, it wasn't just a man running from the lot, it was a ghost vanishing into the world he'd rebuilt on a lie. One day, he was a respected architect in Hamburg, living in a sleek glass house that reflected the calm, controlled life he'd crafted. The next, he was gone. No goodbye, no note, no trace. His office was empty, his bank accounts drained, his home stripped bare, like it had never been lived in at all. Even the furniture was sold. It was as if Stefan Fiser had never existed. But he had, and so had Petra. And now, after 20 years, the truth was finally screaming through the silence. Detective Thomas Siegler stood in the middle of that empty house, his shoes echoing on the cold concrete floor. He stared at the blank walls, the ghost outlines where paintings once hung, and felt something deep in his gut twist. This wasn't panic, this was planning. Stefan hadn't just fled, he'd been preparing for this moment for months. The secondary passports, the offshore transfers, the quiet sale of the house. He'd been one step ahead the whole time. Ziegler clenched his fists. They had him, they had him. The evidence was there, the krampon, the skull, the location. But without a body to stand trial, without a confession, the justice system needed more, and Stefan knew that. He'd counted on it. Back in the quiet town where it all began, Simona Krueger sat at her kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the curtains. She held a faded photo of her and Petra, arms around each other, laughing on a hiking trail. It was the last picture they ever took together. She'd spent 2 decades asking questions no one wanted to answer. Now, the answers had come, but not the closure. Stefan's escape felt like a second death. Her sister hadn't just been murdered on that mountain. She was being erased all over again. And the worst part, no one would ever know the full story unless Stefan was caught. But catching a man who had already outsmarted the system once, that was a long shot. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, a man and a woman checked into a modest guest house in a crowded Southeast Asian city. They spoke little, kept to themselves, and paid in cash. The woman Anna looked exhausted, her eyes darting at every siren, every uniformed officer passing by. The man Stefan sat by the window, watching the street below. He didn't sleep much. When he closed his eyes, he saw the ice. He saw Petra's face. Not as it was in the photo the tourist took, the one with the bright smile and the pink and purple jacket, but as it was in those final moments. The fear, the shock, the blood on the snow, because it was blood, and it was him. The truth, buried under ice and time, wasn't just about a fall, it was about a fight. A final desperate conversation on a frozen plateau, with the wind howling around them. Petra had turned to him that day and said, "I can't do this anymore, Stefan. I love you, but I need to be free." And something in him broke. Not slowly, not with sadness, but with rage. A sudden, blinding fury that came out of nowhere, just like the storm that had swallowed the sky. He'd lunged, she'd stumbled, the rope between them snapped tight. And then, in a moment of pure instinct, he'd raised his foot. The krampon, cold sharp, unrelenting, came down on her skull. Once, twice, again. It wasn't planned. It wasn't cold-blooded. It was a split second of madness in a place where no one could hear her scream, and then he was alone. He didn't remember dragging her body. He didn't remember unclipping her from the rope. But he remembered the boot. His own boot, coming loose. In the struggle, he tried to put it back on, but the ice was too slick, his hands too numb. He left it, and when the storm hit, he used it, his story of survival, of crawling through the snow in a half-frozen cave as a shield. He let the world believe he was a hero, a survivor, a man broken by loss, but Simona had never believed it. She'd spent years digging through old climbing forums, calling Petra's friends, rereading every line of the police report. She even tracked down the Schmidts, the couple who took the photo. They still remembered Petra and Stefan, how happy they looked, how full of life. But Greta Schmidt said something that stuck with Simona. He was holding her close, but his eyes, they didn't match his smile. There was something behind them, like he was afraid of losing her. And now, Simona knew why. Ziegler wasn't giving up. He worked with Interpol, shared the forensic files, put out international alerts. But Stefan had vanished into a world of back alleys and cash-only deals, places where digital trails go cold. Still, Ziegler kept digging. He found a bank transfer routed through Cyprus, then to Thailand. A rental car registered under a fake name near the border. Small breadcrumbs, but enough to keep hope alive. And then, one day, a tip came in. A German man matching Stefan's description had been seen at a remote mountain lodge in northern Laos, a place popular with off-grid climbers and expats. No cameras, no Wi-Fi, just silence and the shadow of the jungle. Ziegler booked a flight. Simona begged to come, but he refused. "This is police work," he said. "And if he's there, it's not safe." But Simona wasn't asking for permission. She packed a bag, booked her own flight, and followed the trail her sister's killer had left behind. She wasn't a detective. She wasn't armed. But she had something years of grief, of doubt, of fighting for a truth no one else would see. And if Stefan thought he could disappear forever, he was wrong, because the mountain had already spoken, and now, so would she. When the news broke that Stefan Fiser had vanished with his partner Anna into the chaotic streets of Southeast Asia, it felt like the mountain had claimed not just Petra, but justice itself. Petra Krueger sat in her sister's favorite chair, the one by the window where Petra used to read, and stared at the blank TV screen. The story had gone global. Couple vanished climbing in Alps. 20 years later, an avalanche reveals shocking evidence. And now it had a new gut-wrenching chapter. The killer was gone, but Simona didn't cry. Not this time. She just clenched her jaw and whispered, "You don't get to disappear." Detective Thomas Ziegler wasn't giving up either. He knew Stefan's escape wasn't the end. It was a crack in the armor. A man who runs leaves a trail, even if it's hidden. And Ziegler had one advantage Stefan didn't count on: time. The world had changed in 20 years. Back in 2002, a man could vanish into the wilderness and stay gone. But now, every border crossing, every cash withdrawal, every phone signal left a digital fingerprint. Ziegler's team worked around the clock, following the money, the passports, the flight records. They discovered Stefan had used an old network friends from his climbing days, a cousin in Bangkok, a shell company in Cambodia. He thought he was off the grid, but he wasn't. He was just out of sight. Then, 6 months later, a breakthrough. A local police force in northern Laos, acting on an Interpol tip, raided a remote guest house near the border. They didn't find Stefan, but they found Anna. She was alone, sick, and terrified. She'd been abandoned. In a tearful interview, she confessed everything. Stefan had planned it all for months. The second passports, the offshore accounts, the quiet sale of the house. He told her it was just a precaution, that the investigation was getting too close, that they might need to disappear for a while. But when the pressure mounted, he made the call. He left her behind and vanished into the jungle. She hadn't seen him in weeks. But before he left, he said one thing: "I can't go back. I killed her. I killed Petra." It wasn't a courtroom confession, it wasn't sworn testimony. But it was the truth, spoken in the dark, to the only person left who knew his secret. And it was enough. Ziegler shared the recording with Simona. She listened to it once, then again, her hands trembling. When it ended, she didn't speak. She just looked out the window, where the first snow of winter was beginning to fall. For the first time in 20 years, she felt something like peace. Not because Stefan would face a trial, because he never did. His body was found months later, deep in a remote valley, caught in a landslide during the monsoon. He wasn't buried in a coffin. He was swallowed by the earth, just like Petra had been swallowed by the ice. But the difference was, Petra was a victim, Stefan was a fugitive, and the world knew it. The case was officially closed. Not with a verdict, but with a reckoning. The avalanche hadn't just revealed bones, it had revealed a lie. And in the end, the truth didn't need a courtroom to be heard. It echoed in the mountains, in the silence of a sister's grief, in the forensic report that matched krampon spikes to skull fractures, in the boot left behind on the ice. Simona didn't hold a press conference. She didn't write a book. Instead, she planted a tree in Petra's memory, right outside their childhood home. A maple, strong and slow growing. Every year, when the leaves turned red, she'd visit and say, "I remember you." And that's the thing about stories like this, about love, betrayal, and the slow thaw of time. They remind us that some secrets don't stay buried, that glaciers move, that mountains speak, and that even when justice is delayed, denied, or derailed, the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface. Because in the end, it wasn't the avalanche that solved the mystery. It was a sister who refused to forget, a detective who kept digging, a woman who finally spoke up, and a mountain that, after 20 years, gave up its dead and its secrets. If you've ever lost someone and been told to let it go, this story is for you. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is hold on.